There is a major twister after the Hindenburg report with the lens on a potential non-disclosure or worse, conflict of interest involving the securities regulator SEBI chief Madhvi Puri Buch. Now, she along with her husband Dhaval Buch have been accused by Hindenburg of investing in an offshore fund that was later linked to the Adani group. Now, the Hindenburg report claims that there was a conflict of interest and a lack of objectivity in regulating the activities of the Adani group. In fact, today, the shares of the Adani group companies experienced a decline. In some stocks, it went up to almost 7% decline this morning. But the broader markets were fine. In fact, the Sensex opened flat and then gained as the day progressed. Many investors did opt for a cautious approach, but the kind of meltdown that they were expecting in the markets when we saw the Hindenburg 1.0 report that came out last year, that was not how the market reacted this time around. Markets climbed back by the end of the day, and that, many experts are saying, is the market discounting any kind of substantive allegation in that report. SEBI has also put out a statement clarifying that chairperson Madhvi Puri Buch made all the relevant disclosures from time to time. Buch herself has said that her finances are an open book, calling the Hindenburg report a character assassination plot. A political face-off has erupted over the report. Rahul Gandhi has demanded a joint parliamentary committee inquiry, while the BJP has accused the Congress of trying to create economic anarchy.
The Congress party, its allies, and its closest allies, the Toolkit Gang, have conspired together to usher in economic anarchy and instability in India. In their pathological hatred against Narendra Modi ji, led by Mr. Rahul Gandhi and his friends, Toolkit Gangs, Congress party today has developed a hatred against India itself.
The savings of millions of Indians, hard-earned, honestly earned savings, are at risk. It is therefore imperative that this matter is investigated. Slowly becoming crystal clear why Prime Minister Modi is against a joint parliamentary committee looking into this matter.
All right, so broadly, before I get an expert view on this, broadly there are three allegations against the SEBI chairperson which the Hindenburg report has made. Number one, that she had invested in an offshore fund between 2015 and 2018, and in 2018 she divested or redeemed or liquidated that fund, but that fund later on in 2022 was one of 13 funds that the Supreme Court appointed committee inquired into, where the allegation was that those 13 funds were allegedly used by Vinod Adani, the elder brother of Mr. Gautam Adani, to siphon back funds into the Indian stock market. So the first allegation against Madhvi Puri Buch is one of those funds she and her husband too were invested in. The second allegation is that her husband, after he retired from Unilever, became a consultant for Blackstone in 2019, and Blackstone had been awarded a real estate-linked instrument. The Hindenburg allegation is that this was a quid pro quo for SEBI granting Blackstone the rights to this real estate-linked instrument. As a quid pro quo, her husband was made a consultant for Blackstone. And the third allegation in the Hindenburg report against the Buches is that they had a consulting firm in which initially Madhvi Puri had 100% stake and then later she transferred that to her husband, which had consulted for private companies even after she became a whole-time member of SEBI and even after she became a chairperson of SEBI. That same consulting firm was used by her husband for his consultations after he retired and joined Blackstone in 2019. So these are the three broad allegations, and the Buches have put out a very detailed defense against these allegations. Does the defense cut ice? Let's try and make sense of this. Bodhisattva Ganguly is consulting editor with Money Control. He's now joining us. Bodhi, thank you very much for joining us. Let me deal with the first charge that's been leveled against Madhvi Puri Buch, that she and her husband had investment in an offshore fund, which later on was alleged to be one of the funds that Vinod Adani used to siphon funds back into the Indian stock markets. The Buches have put out a defense. Does that defense hold good? specifically on allegation 1?
Okay, the facts are convoluted, and I think it is possible that new information could emerge. But see, the investments, what is undisputed, even if you go by Hindenburg, is that these investments were made way back in 2015, when both Madhavi and her husband were private persons. They were working in a private capacity. They are based in Singapore. They have invested in a fund called IP Plus One Fund. The structure which Hindenburg is talking about is something called the Global Opportunities Fund. The investment which IP Plus One Fund made, and IFL, which has now issued a detailed or 360 Wealth Fund, as it is now called, has issued a very detailed clarification and what that fund, and they have clarified that they have not invested in any, in any Adani securities, and that in fact 90% of their investment were in debt instruments. Now, unless Hindenburg can bring fresh information to light which will contradict this, we must take this assumption to be true. They've also, Madhavi Butch has and Dhaval Butch have explained that the reason why they invested in the fund is that the fund manager was personally known to them. And I think Anil Ahuja in an interview has clarified that he has not invested in any Adani company because at that time he was a director on the board of Adani, of various Adani enterprises.
Yeah.
It's, as he said, that would be insider trading 101. So he has not done that. So I think it's been, so yes, I would find the denials fairly convincing. I think the allegations are fairly thin.
I do want to ask you, but the moot point on this particular allegation, even the opposition parties are sort of making this the moot point, is that in 2023, when the Supreme Court appointed a 6-member committee to inquire into the allegations against the Adani Group, did Madhavi Puri Butch reveal or make a disclosure that in one of the 13 funds, she too had invested in the past, although she had redeemed that much before this inquiry was ordered? Do we know anything about whether that disclosure was made?
Okay, so that's a good question. So they have, so the statement issued by Madhavi Puri Butch and Dhaval Butch does not make this clear as to whether they indeed made a disclosure. That could be the one. See, let me just look at the big picture here. I quite frankly do not think there is any anything sinister which can be read into the investment by the Butch couple in a fund run by a fairly well-known fund manager. The fund appears to have been, by the way, they don't seem to have made much money on the fund. I think the total investment value is about $800,000, which is not a huge amount. And it was redeemed several years before this event. It's a convoluted structure. Some of these funds do indeed have layered ownership structure. That by itself, by the way, is standard. There is something in Bermuda, there's something below that in Mauritius, and so on. Again, one can sort of read sinister meanings or ascribe sinister meanings into these structures, but these are fairly common. These are fairly common. Whether she made a disclosure to the Supreme Court committee, though, is not clear at this point in time.
Okay.
But I would say that even if a disclosure was not made, I think too much should not be read into it. I would not say that's a very major lapse. It is, however, completely up to the judiciary and the Supreme Court to, take note of that if they wish to.
So the other allegation is that concerning the Blackstone Group. In the Blackstone Group, the allegation is that Madhavi Puri Butch's husband, Dhaval Butch, became a consultant with Blackstone after he retired. And the Hindenburg allegation is that this was in quid pro quo to some of the real estate-linked instruments that SEBI had given. One of the companies that benefited from that instrument, or one of the companies that got the rights to that instrument, was Blackstone. Does the defense by the Butch couple, is it convincing in this regard?
I think the Blackstone part is even more absurd because first of all, REIT real estate investment trust is a very well-known, an instrument for investing in the real estate sector. It is part of the natural process of the development of the Indian market that more and more instruments such as there's REITs, there's InvITs, which allow you to invest in infrastructure, basically highways and basically structures which own highways and toll roads and the like, right? So these are normal market structures. I think to read sinister meanings into that is, I think, even more sort of a convoluted type of logic or argument. Blackstone has not officially come on the record, but Money Control has reported, quoting sources close to Blackstone, that he had nothing to do with the real estate part of the business. He was investing. He was advising Blackstone's private equity, arm.
Business.
So yes, I would not take this seriously at all. So yeah, I'd like to point out also. See, the statement issued by SEBI also makes it clear that enforcement action with regard to the allegations against the Adani Group and some FPIs. The SEBI press release says that enforcement actions have been initiated. They have not given details, but it's in the public domain. The short sellers tend to be muckrakers, so they have what they seem to have done is they have carried out an elaborate exercise of data scraping, and they've come up with bits and pieces of data. And then they have, made it seem very sort of sinister and conspiratorial and so on. I think in fact, quite frankly, I think it casts more doubt on the credibility of Hindenburg than of the SEBI chairperson and indeed of SEBI.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us and explaining that to our viewers. Bodhisattva Ganguly is consulting editor with Money Control.